it's a controversial opinion to many who listen to the show even, but to me, Cream are three musicians who aren't listening to each other and are masturbating into a black hole. Welcome to Discograffiti, the podcast that allows Gen X music maniacs to smell like teen spirit again by connecting with a brotherhood that's obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and with 3 new episodes each week, you'll gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. In this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Ira Stone as we interview the man who performed at the original 1969 Woodstock and acted as an incredibly adept accompanist and writer for Bert Sommer, Leslie West, and many others. In the next half hour, we'll learn about how Ira and Leslie West obtained their unique guitar sound together, the making of Leslie West's great Fatsby record, which song Ira was playing when the very first standing ovation at Woodstock went down, and the last time Ira ever spoke with Burt Sommer before his death. Okay, first things first, you need to know just how seriously I take this craziness. Discograffiti is heavily researched, and the music is always reassessed with fresh ears. We don't just cover albums. We do a searingly honest deep dive analysis of all EPs, singles, comp tracks, relevant solo work, and sometimes bootlegs and live stuff. Every release is slapped with an objectively accurate star rating between 0 and 5, which allows us all, the real reason we do this, the Tootsie Pop reward at the center of the rock and roll lolly, to come face to face with the true shape of an artist's overall arc. Be sure to follow along with us chronologically as we go. The link to our legendary playlist is right there in the show notes and on our website at discograffiti.com. Coming up, we've got the remaining 2 volumes in our We Are Stardust, We Are Over series, which does a deep dive on the 4 least fortunate acts that played Woodstock. Of course, you'll especially want to hear the upcoming Burt Sommer episode. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and click follow. And get ready to meet your new friends. They're all kicking it right now in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, great artist and track recommendations, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and show topic decisions, frequent videos that address the community, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for your next collaborator, and much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And so without further ado, tonight's guest has a lifetime in music and currently lives, when I close my eyes, I picture him on a sprawling, palatial sort of communal kibbutz style thing, but I know I'm of course making things up in my head. I do look forward to dropping in unannounced on him at some point in the near future, as hopefully he will do with me. Ladies and gentlemen, lads and ladies, out in the twilight reaches of Discograffitiville, will you please help me in welcoming the one, the only Ira Stone. You still there, brother?
I'm here.
Okay. I thought my lengthy intro had potentially induced a spell of narcolepsy on you.
No. I'm with you.
Okay, cool. I'm really psyched about this because I don't even think I have interviewed yet somebody who played at Woodstock. And of course, you've done a hell of a lot more than that. And I really want to get to the bottom of what your life in music was like. Because I know Bert Sommer is not, that was a blip, really, right?
It was a good 3-year period, but it wasn't where I started. That's correct.
Right. So you really like my family. I mean, my mom was born in Queens in 1948, just like you.
Wow.
Yeah. You were born in Queens in 48 and started playing piano when you were 4?
Yeah, I went to the now defunct, as of about 2 years ago, Turtle Bay Music School in Manhattan, and my mom used to bring me by subway to take lessons, and I was actually doing some performances on piano with 4.5, 5 for their little get-togethers. That was my start on piano.
So what instigated the switch to guitar in 1959? Was it rock and roll? Did you start to think that the piano was Squaresville, or what was the notion there?
Well, actually, I was sent to camp in Maine and pretty young, I guess 7. And I think when I was around 11 or 12, when they'd have the camp council fires around the lake in Maine, there was one counselor who had a guitar, and he used to play the guitar. He played folk songs like from the old pre-Kingston Trio days, Scarlet Ribbons, and it was really cool. And this guy got the attention of the sister girls camp, and I went, oh, that's really cool. This guy's getting to meet all the girls, and he's playing guitar around a campfire, and it just seemed cool. So I got home from camp, and my parents got me an acoustic guitar, and I started taking lessons.
Everyone starts playing guitar to get the girls, but when did you and Maxine get married?
I met Max in '67. I was playing with bands at the time, but I was in college for art, and there was an ad on the bulletin board saying if you want to do artwork for the student underground newspaper, come down to the Rathskeller at 4 o'clock and meet Max. So I walked in there, very shy I was back then, and I met her there. I said, where's Max? And this blonde chick came out with long hair and said, I'm Max. I said, no, where's Max? I thought I was meeting some guy, but it was Maxine. So we went out, I guess, within a short period of time, a week or two. And we've been together ever since. I was 67. We got married in 70, not that that's quite relevant. We've been together since 67.
What I'm really kind of, dovetailing towards is the question, did the guitar actually get you the girl, or was it you that got the girl?
No, it had nothing to do with a guitar at that point. I mean, I was playing with bands, but I was getting my degree in art. So I showed up as an artist willing to work on the paper. We went out, and our first date, I took her to see my buddy, Leslie West, who was, we were friends, I guess, in '65.
Wait, hold on. We're getting ahead because I still want to talk about Johnny and Jeff Geist.
Oh, yeah, great. Well, that was, I guess, my first major band for me. I was still in high school when I met the Geist brothers. We got hired, I remember, for the WMCA Good Guys shows. That was a radio station back in New York at the time. I think it was 540 on the AM dial, 560, something like that. And we ended up backing up Tom Jones at one of their shows and had a lot of fun with him. He was the first great guitar player I ever worked with Johnny Geist, and he and his brother sang amazing harmony. You close your eyes and you'd think you were working and listening to Simon and Garfunkel. Very talented. They had a record deal, I think, with Columbia back then.
But this is not as the Fortunes. You guys morphed into a band called The Last Word.
They got signed as writers and singers with, God, I can't think of his name now, the guy that produced the McCoys. In any case, they did a record called The Last Word.
Bob Feldman.
Yeah, right.
So that's kind of amazing. You're in high school. You're already, you haven't had any failed outfits. You started with a band that's, working with very well-known national acts. I'd say right out of the gate, you're pretty lucky.
It's hard sometimes to remember the exact years. I mean, if I had a look at the musical influences bands I was in, it was certainly Johnny and Jeff Geist, working with them. And they're both still in New York. And then after that, Bert came along basically because I had a number of years with Leslie as a friend. We used to play, before I met Max, maybe in '66 or early '67, we used to play in my attic and Long Island in Westbury and put our guitars through a Waldensack reel-to-reel tape recorder on 10 to get that sound. That was before even the Sam Ash Fudds tones. Those were the first ones Leslie used to use. But that led to a number of different acts for me, including Bert in that 3-year period.
And this is all in Long Island. There's like a pretty active scene going on, right? I mean, you got, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the Left Bank is out there at this time, right?
Yeah, the Left Bank was out there. Billy Joel was playing with the Hassles.
And Attila.
Yeah, right.
Attila made, I mean, I'm not a Billy Joel fan, but Attila is one of the worst records I've ever heard in my life.
I probably listened to it back then, but I don't remember it.
It's remarkably bad.
We shared a drummer at the time in Long Island. It was in Glen Cove, I think. Great drummer named Jeff Schwartz. I knew him from college. And he did a lot of shows with Billy back then and some other Long Island people. But there was a great music scene in Long Island back then. But once I started hanging out with the Vagrants and listening to Leslie.
Those who don't know, because I know the Vagrants through researching Bert. The Vagrants are really good. The thing about the Vagrants that I find really cool is that there's a smattering of great fuzz guitar nugget style gems, but at the same time, the band did moody, minor key, understated balladeer type stuff very, very adeptly.
Yeah, they were amazing to watch then. And they had a residency at the Action House in Long Island. And for it seems like many years prior to Woodstock, I would go all the time. And then I started going, we saw Led Zeppelin, John Mayall, and you could see the bands from literally right up to the stage. It was a great time for music in Long Island, and there were a lot of really good bands out there at the time.
And then, during this time, you're not in the Vagrants, right?
Oh God, no.
Yeah, you were in the music.
I was a fan. Leslie and I became friends, but I was a fan. I said, this guy can play guitar like no one.
You're in the music explosion at this point, right?
No, I think the music explosion was later. I worked with a lot of Long Island bands. One of the keyboard players, a guy named Larry Laufer, I did a couple of studio albums with him. When the Vagrants broke up, their drummer played with him in a band, and I remember recording an Electric Lady with him because the producer was the drummer from the Amboy Dukes, Dave Palmer, and it was a bunch of great sessions. Nothing ever really happened with the band, but somehow Larry got into the music explosion and brought me in on guitar and a bass player, Ronnie Bertone, also from college in Long Island, into the band. But we got into the road band. So in other words, back then, they'd get a hit record, they'd record a hit record, with studio guys. And
better than being a fake band, because I know Moby, Fleetwood Mac, all these bands had to contend with a completely fake band going out.
Right. Well, what they did, they put a band out with, I believe, 2 or 3 of the guys from the Music Explosion. I remember Rick Nexta and Bob Avery were on the original record and everything. Funny enough, I just thought about this. We rehearsed in Mansfield, Ohio, on a chicken farm. And on the wall behind me is a picture of me and the band with like tons of chickens in the chicken coop. But a couple of miles away was a James Gang or Joe Walsh's band.
Fucking great band, man.
Yeah, it could have been Mansfield, it could have been the next town over, but it was a great time, and it was a lot of fun. That's how I got to play with them. That band morphed into the Crazy Elephant. They had another hit record, Gimme Gimme Good Love, and after Woodstock, certainly 69, 70, and 71, I did a lot of gigs with Bert, and then in 72 we did a lot of traveling abroad and writing and playing for a couple of years.
Who's we?
Me and Max.
Okay.
Writing together. We had our own album was released in 75 by distributed by Roulette Records. Morris Levy.
We're going to talk about Morris Levy. Don't worry.
Anyhow, yeah. So, but Leslie and Corky actually played on our album, as did John Lennon's band, the Crazy Elephant. No, the Elephant's Memory.
Right.
The studio experience having those guys as a rhythm section and Adam Polito on Hammond organ, it was great. And then for another song or two, we had Leslie play.
So, looking back, with hindsight is 2020, right? So Leslie is, in retrospect, is like one of the architectures of the classic rock sound. I honestly am more taken with his stuff than I am with Cream. And I know that he was only, at least Mountain, the intention was just to fill the power trio space on the shelf that was left from Cream's breakup. But I think they're better because Mountain is Cream without pretensions. So to me, that's a hell of a lot more exciting and feet on the ground. It's, Cream, it's a controversial opinion. to many who listen to the show even, but to me, Cream are three musicians who aren't listening to each other and are masturbating into a black hole.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. As a guitar player primarily, when I think of the guitar players that I've really liked from pre-Woodstock and currently today, Eric is a major influence and a wonderful musician. So is Leslie. So is Pete Townsend. I don't want to leave anyone out here. I love Keith Richards. But Mountain had songs. You have to understand where they came from, because Felix Popularity got assigned by Atlantic. He just came off a big hit. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Jesse Cole and the Youngbloods. And he did the Cream record. So they gave him Leslie, and it came out. He became the bass player, and they put the band together. Felix had a very musical background.
Everybody loves Cream. Everybody loves the Doors. To me, those are the most overrated bands of the 60s.
Yeah, I used to see the Doors at the Fillmore East many times. Amazing band.
But looking back, in your heart of hearts, who did you think was going to be the biggest act? Did you think it was going to be Bert? Did you think it was going to be Leslie? Whose band did you want to get in and ride to success?
No, it never really was that.
It sounds like all you wanted to do was play. You weren't thinking career. You weren't thinking, it was just like wherever you were trying to make some beautiful sounds. Is that?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I was a huge Stones fan for the longest time. And then when Mick Taylor quit the Stones, I think it was the 72 tour.
It was 74.
Was it that late?
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, at that point, we were with Leslie, and according to Leslie, that's why Mick was around, and we had the opportunity to work with Leslie and Mick Jagger. Leslie said he was being considered for the Stones when Mick Taylor quit, and we got to record at Electric Lady on. It was Leslie's first album, solo album, The Great Fatsby.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure of the time. I thought this was more like 71, 72, but you were asking me to travel back many years.
No, it's okay. I have tons of useless data in my head. So the idea behind this podcast is legitimize the fact that I've given my brain over completely to all this information. Basically what happened was Mick left, and then for the record in 75 called Black and Blue, what they did was, instead of taking a break, they were trying out a whole bunch of different guitarists, and they wound up using all of them on the record. Or maybe not all of them, but 3 or 4 different possible substitutes, including Ron Wood, are on that record.
Okay. Me to say, I was a huge Stones fan, and the opportunity to work with Leslie and Mick Jagger down in Hendrix's studio in the Village was quite amazing.
You're only on, as far as the Mountain / Leslie discography goes, you're only on Great Fatsby, right?
That's correct. Yes, we had 2 songs on that album.
Why weren't you guys, together more often? It just never worked out timing wise?
We were thrilled to have any of our songs on Leslie's album.
Having heard your work at Woodstock with Bert, you're an incredibly tasteful accompanist. And, my favorite thing that Bert ever did is Woodstock. And part of that is you. Hey lads and ladies, Dave Gebrow here. I abandoned my career and moved my family 3,000 miles to be able to focus exclusively on Discograffiti. And so if you're like me and enough is just never enough, then please visit patreon.com/Discograffiti and become one of our Patreon soldiers of sound. Discograffiti is an entirely listener-supported show, and it's also intended to be a 3 times a week music deep dive experience. So do us both a favor and consider giving it a shot. Trust me, I'm working hard for the money, so hard for it, honey. There's the main show on Sunday, a Thursday wildcard episode, which is either an interview with that week's guest or an offshoot show like Rock Cousteau and Queasy Listening. And then on Tuesdays, there's the humdinger of them all, Discograffiti's The Private Press with Paul Major. You got nothing to lose. If you don't dig it after a month, you're refunded, no questions asked. Once again, that's patreon.com/Discograffiti.
Bert was always treated us really, really well. I mean, we were treated like as equals, not as, junior sidemen or whatever. He'd have a vision on what he wants to hear. because he was brilliant musically. And I actually learned a lot from him that I still use when I play piano. His song "Heart of the City" that he wrote on piano was a phenomenal, phenomenal tune. And the way he breaks up the chords in that are intonations that I use when I play piano now and organ. So it was a learning experience. You know, I had big learning experience with Johnny Geist on guitar, big learning experience working with Leslie, and a major experience, not just in songwriting, but in actual playing, working with Bert. They had a really well-attuned ear. I certainly have used everything I've learned on through the years.
I mean, just from an outsider's point of view, it seems like 69 to 71 was potentially the headiest time. I mean, you're playing at Carnegie Hall in February 71, opening for Poco, and Mike Brown is playing with you guys from Left Bank.
Yeah, and the Capitol Theater, we opened up 2 nights for the Allman Brothers were second on the bill. The headliners were Delaney and Bonnie. Those were amazing shows.
Before I even go there, did you feel like, oh shit, we're getting swept up in this madness? Or did you think that things were gonna just keep getting crazier, better, more lucrative, all that kind of stuff, so that there was disappointment when it didn't?
No, because Bert's gigs were spaced out in between, and they started working on a third album pretty quickly after the second album didn't take off. He changed labels. He went from Capitol for the first to, I believe it was Eleuthera for the next 2. They had their own label. There were other people got involved, and he was like caught up in the management artist thing. We would just do what we had to when we were told. But no, I mean, we obviously we're all playing in the same band to be a huge hit. I guess I forgot it climbed the charts a little bit, but it never took off totally.
Number 48.
Okay, number 48.
And honestly, I think it's just about as good a song as Joni Mitchell's Woodstock, as far as something that's supposed to encapsulate and sum up an experience. I think it's a wonderful song.
You know what? I don't know enough about the politics in the music business at that time, but I'm sure there were tons of politics. I mean, Artie was a major player. We didn't get a hit past that. I'm not exactly sure why. It's really hard to come to grips with why some things happened and some things didn't for Bert. From what I've been told by music historians, fans, musicians, producers, the fact that there was so much politics involved with the record companies back then, and Bert couldn't get into the movie or on the first album had a lot to do with it. And as a matter of fact, 2019, when Max and I were doing his songs in these Woodstock shows around the area, Howard Stern spent a lot of time talking about Bert on his show. And it's kind of interesting that because Andy Zax's record came out, there were a lot of people. It's not Andy Zax and Brian Keogh worked together on that. Brian is also a brilliant producer, musician. He played keys for the Who, and was with them on tour this past summer when I saw him. But these guys both have said to me that they had to do after 13 years work on all those acts that played at Woodstock. One of their favorite and easiest acts to work with were the tapes from Bert at Woodstock. It was very simple. There were 3 guys. The music just came off the tapes that they had, and they were able to reproduce actually what we sounded like on stage that day, because I've listened to that back to back with what I recorded on stage, and they did an amazing job. I'll never understand why they didn't get a Grammy for that.
Let's talk about the video from that. So have you only, just like the rest of us schmoes, have you only seen Jennifer, or have you seen the whole thing?
I've seen the whole thing. I put on Facebook, I had gotten the unedited version. I mean, Jennifer's gotten a couple million views on YouTube and everything, but there's an unedited version I got from Scott Parker, who is definitely a Woodstock historian, that he had, which actually, I have it on Facebook, Ira Stone. Somewhere down the list of posts, you'll find the unedited version of Jennifer, which is really cool. I understand that there is also, and when it's over, and there was one other that they have filmed, But in really trying to track down the video, I remember I once spoke to Phil Ramone, who produced Billy Joel, and
Mhm.
I'd met him in Connecticut, and he said there was a guy that had all these films somewhere. He had the whole set, and I've still yet to find that. I guess the person that I've met that knew the most about it was Scott Parker, and he said I believe he's seen two other songs, but perhaps without the audio, just visual. I also put on Facebook without the audio. Someone from the audience had a shot of Jennifer close up in the audience, and it's the only time I've ever seen what we looked like on stage playing the song
Yeah.
from out front like that. But it was probably Super 8 or something with bad
Not like
quality.
there's not a market for this kind of stuff. I mean, when I go on Facebook, every now and then, there's an ad that's obviously I'm the target market for it, but it's like a pendant created from a piece of the fucking wood from the stage
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Woodstock, that kind of crap. And so if that's being circulated as a legitimate purchase, man, they got to get those tapes together or the footage, because there will be people drooling over this stuff when it's finally out there.
I would hope to see it someday.
So after these gigs, like from 69 to 71, post Woodstock, did you play with Burt again after 71?
No, I actually, I remember the beginning of 72, it's probably late in 71. The beginning of 72, we had a manager at the time who lived in Brooklyn, and he wanted us to go.
Was it Mark Etra?
Yes, correct. And Mark wanted us to go to India. He went to school with a very wealthy Indian who also played guitar that he was friends with, really close with. So we went to India, and we started working on our music there. And then we traveled a lot. We found other places in the Orient.
This is with Burt?
No. This is without Burt. This is
Okay.
just me and Max. The
Okay.
manager was someone Max knew from Long Island, and he really believed in our songs. So what we did is we would go there and work on more music, come back to New York, record. We'd go back, and sometimes we would play in some of these countries and work on tunes. And gradually over time, we had enough material for an album. And it came out in 75, but I think the last recording we did was maybe in 74 with the rhythm section from Elephant's Memory and Leslie and Corky. And then we had enough for an album, and we got offered this deal.
I guess I meant with Burt. I mean, so how did things...
No. The Burt thing ended when we started going to India in 72. We lost touch with Burt. He had picked up a TV show and went out to California sometime.
Yeah, that was like 76. So he was incarcerated in 73, 74. He was had already reached a state of abject junkiehood by like 73. How much of those hard drugs did you see around during the...
Well, toward the end, we saw enough of them toward the end of 72. Hard for me to pin timing down exactly, but that would have been the end of 72. And there weren't gigs at that point, and that's why we wanted to work on our own music. We were writing a lot at the time. We connected with this manager, and that took us through the next couple of years of our life.
Look, I'm not looking to rub dirt in any wounds or anything, rub salt in any wounds, but I know that drug use was a major part of Burt's life. It's in his songs. Obviously he was incarcerated for it. So in 69, when Tim Hardin is wobbling on his feet, did you heroin, was it in existence?
No.
See it back then? Not at all.
First of all, Tim was wobbling in our hotel room that night, but we don't really know much from that particular drug, from opium, heroin, whatever at that point. But frankly, someone told me that Burt was using at Woodstock, a very good friend of his, not at the festival, but around that time. And I never, ever saw any indication of Burt with hard drugs at that time. We all smoked. That's about it.
Yeah.
Maybe some coke or something. And I don't recall any. If the last gig with Polka was in February, I think it was February 71 at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
I don't remember any hard drugs around that time at all. So we might be talking, even though he was incarcerated, Max and I were out of the country. I don't even remember that he was incarcerated.
Yeah.
73 and 4.
Yeah, that was kind of a left turn with things.
Yeah, well, we lost touch with him then. We also had lost touch with Leslie till we got back into the States around 75. And the reason I know it was our last trip that we were overseas. And when we came back, and the song that was on Leslie West's, his album was coming out, The Great Fatsby. I had some conversations with his manager at that time about writing credits, and there was some redistribution because of lyric changes. So we went from one percentage of a song to another, but it all got worked out. But the bottom line is that was when I reconnected with Leslie in 75. But I hadn't been in touch with Bert for a really long time because we spoke to Bert again in 1989, about a year before he died. We were up in Newport, Rhode Island with my son, who was basically 3 years old at the time. And
Was this the last time you spoke with him?
that was the last time I spoke. A fan of Bert's, worked for a company. I'll never forget it. I don't know how she got to me. Maybe it was because Life magazine came out at that time, and it said we were in Connecticut in '89. But I got a call from this woman. I don't remember her name. She said she worked for 1-800-DIAL-GOD. And I'm going, what is this? And apparently it was a moving company, and she knew where Bert was. And somehow, I think I called him, we didn't connect, and he called me back, and we spoke for a while. And that was 1989. That was the last time I spoke with Bert.
Do you remember anything about the conversation that stood out?
I do remember stuff about the conversation. I asked him.
All right, that about does it. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to our graphic designer, TODD ZIMMER, my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Ira Stone, Maxine Stone, my incredibly loyal fans, and most especially the entire Patreon community. I love you, and this show would not exist without you. Be sure to mark your calendars because this Friday, March 3rd, we're celebrating the bittersweet triumph that is De La Soul's catalog finally available for streaming. And of course, just after Trugoy the Dove passed away at an unbelievable 54 years old. So join us as we pay our respects to an episode that was crafted for this long in coming and very happy day. Subscribe to our Patreon and keep your ears peeled throughout the week because this Monday brings another incredible Patreon-only wildcard episode. This week, it's the exciting conclusion of an interview with Ira Stone. That's followed on Wednesday by another delectable Patreon-only episode of Discograffiti's The Private Press with Paul Major, wherein we'll be solving the 50-year-old sunshine pop mystery that is the constant sound. That's patreon.com/discograffiti. This is an entirely listener-supported show, and I offer a full, no-questions-asked money-back guarantee. So if you dug this episode, you don't have an excuse. Check it out right now. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!